special guest star, Dr. Heather Stewart. Thank you very, very much for joining us this afternoon. And as you can see, usually the participants is not as many as this. So I think everybody is so excited to listen to your presentations and also have a very good discussion with you. But before we start, I'd like to introduce Dr. Heather Stewart. Heather Stewart is leading the Global Digital First Business Transformation Project and a 12 university study into the impact of the rapid transition to online learning. She is a multi-award winning journalism and communication practitioner, an academic of 15 years with a work integrated and online teaching and learning focus. And as a contractor and consultant, has project management expertise running small and large integrated media and communication change campaigns and crisis and issues incidents. As a data analyst, she specializes is Leximancer and Advival. I'd like to learn both of those. Heather, please be my teacher. She's qualified VET industry trainer and volunteers at UQ as a mental health champion and first responder. Wow. Her strength is networking and her passion is social equity, using her skills to support initiatives in homelessness, mental health and well-being, digital inclusion, environmental sustainability, and using digital first transformation for economic resilience. Her PhD was a longitudinal study into the impact of technological change on journalism, craft, and inquiry at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Great experience, and I'm sure that we can learn a lot from Heather this afternoon. We cannot wait longer to listen to your sharing and your presentation. So Heather, the time is yours. If you could please manage to 20 minutes presentation, so then we can have longer and good discussions afterwards. Please, Heather, you may proceed.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm very privileged to be here and acknowledge the distinguished participants in this forum, and I apologise for not addressing you appropriately, and I am so delighted to be here.
Yeah, and I've talked to Heather that this is a very friendly type of discussions. So many of us are academics, but some of us also practitioners. So we might also come up with different kind of questions and maybe also share our own experience.
I can't wait to hear those.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah,
and thank you so much. That's wonderful. And thank you everyone for coming along. Very excited. So just making sure you can see my screen.
We haven't got your screen here in our monitor.
Oh, I can't share yet. I need permission.
Let me, multiple participant. Okay, I've changed the setting. Can you share it now?
I'll try.
Okay, yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Now we can see it. Okay, the time is yours.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief. I wanted to give you a bit of an insight into the Digital First Business Transformation Project and show how I'm connecting with Universitas Indonesia and how grateful I am to be invited to speak to you today. I work with this fantastic team, and this is led by Associate Professor Sarah Jane Kelly, Dr. Liz Ferrier, who specialises in advertising, and Dr. Belinda Wade, who specialises in sustainability.
Sorry, Heather, to interrupt. Can you make it into a slideshow?
Slideshow, of course. Let me see if I can do that. Thank you for telling me. You just don't know what it looks like on the other side.
Thank you.
Perfect. So this is our team, and Senior Lecturer Andre Pachetti and Suvi is our representative from University of Queensland Global Team. In our project team with UE, we have a very large group from UE, including two of you here today in this presentation, Imam and Riani, and I'm really delighted to be working with you both. And there you are. There's our team in UE. Okay. So the Digital First Business Transformation Project started in February 2020 before COVID-19. It is a large group of education academics, business academics and communication academics globally in 8 regions. Within 2 weeks of starting the project, COVID struck and we decided to continue with the project. And we worked on this until April 2020 when the grants that we were collaborating with UI on were suspended because of the suspension of the funding. But regardless, we continued to work together because we have a shared goal of trying to collaborate in research, and this is one of those such advantages as a result of us connecting in February 2020. So this is our project, and I will talk about qualitative research within it in a second, but I want to give you some perspective about the project so you can see how we can bring that method, that form into here. So we're combining educators, industry and government across multiple sectors and 8 regions with a view of hosting a symposium in 2021. So our research is tailored to meet a whole number of participants with large and vast partnerships from public, private and non-government organisations to identify the digital first needs by mapping sector-specific challenges and opportunities for transformation to optimise bilateral engagement and build resilience. Within that, you can do quantitative surveys and very effectively come up with quick data, which is what we're about to do in our combined UQ-UI small medium enterprise study, which I'm about to tell you about. So I'll start with a quantitative approach and then explain how we will move this into a qualitative approach to give a rounded picture for the 12-week study. Just to give you some context, the idea of the study is to promote Indonesian COVID-19 recovery and societal equality through digital transformation of small and medium enterprises. It's going to run between August and October 2020. It's a 3-month study situated at the home institution of UQ, but in very strong collaboration with UI. And we are investigating how COVID-19 vulnerability self-identified by Indonesian small medium enterprises in a critical window of change can build agility and resilience. And we've tied this project to the sustainability factors of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. And this establishes background information about the practices using the Build Back Better and Recovery, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Framework, which was put out in 2017. This is the title of our project, which I've just explained. So the idea of promoting Indonesian COVID recovery and societal equality through digital transformation could be done quantitatively, and that was our plan. We were to do a small survey and then we were to interview 20 CEOs of some of the small medium enterprises in Indonesia connected with Jackpreneur. And through Riani and Iman, we've been able to connect with Jackpreneur and now have access to over 900 small medium enterprises. So from a scoping perspective, I've spent the last 3 weeks seeking 3 amendments through the Australia-Indonesia Centre to streamline our study. So what was supposed to be a study using a survey formula where I would work very closely with Iman and Riani interviewing people for 1-hour blocks, and they would each be paid $100 Australian as a CEO, and we would have quality control in this study. We were going to get qualitative answers using a survey quantitative approach. So this gave us 2 options to quickly get data and map it statistically, but also get the richness that you would get by interviewing the CEO and also capturing that within the survey process. Bilaterally, if there was a language need for Bahasa, Iman and Riani were able to speak the Bahasa and I would be able to support The idea being that because it's an Australian funded study, we would be writing the answers in English, but we needed to be careful that we weren't compromising the data integrity in taking down the answers for the CEOs. So there is a qualitative control mechanism that needs to be put in place here. So by having two people from two universities in the interview, we're actually helping the richness of the data and ensuring that it is maintaining integrity. Doing an interview, a qualitative interview with one person has its risks. So therefore, with two of us sitting in, we address issues like comprehension. If the questions are in a framing that isn't good for an Indonesian CEO, if the language of the sustainable development goals is difficult to understand, we're able to use an opportunity in the interview to explain the sustainable development goals and then get the answer into the survey for the quantitative outcome. But also in the to and fro, we're recording it and it is being transcribed, and that gives us richer data which we can check against. So we've got a double layer here of our gathering of our data. So in my background, UQ and University of Queensland has built two types of software. They've built NVivo and LexiMancer. I've put a link to NVivo here. The version is 12. When I learnt the version, it was version 2A. So as I was doing my longitudinal PhD, which was a case study using qualitative methodology, I was using NVivo to code my data, but I didn't trust NVivo. What I did was I coded it with a yellow highlighter pen, then I put it into Excel, and then I ran it through NVivo, and then I coded it in NVivo. So I was not a learning academic, but I was an academic who didn't trust this new software. And one of the first few people published in this area using NVivo in journalism. There are lots of people in different areas across faculties that have done health and NVivo or business and NVivo, but very few specialise in journalism and NVivo. So what NVivo does is it helps you discover more from your qualitative and mixed methods data. And I'll show you what I did with my thesis later. But I want to keep this relevant to the small medium enterprise study that we're doing together, the two universities. I want to tell you a little bit about LexiMancer and why you would bother doing both. So it gives text analytics. It's a technological solution. Now you can build beautiful diagrams using qualitative analysis in Excel. And again, just to be really safe in my thesis, I did that twice too. I was so distrustful of a software application for text analysis that I used a traditional method of the yellow highlighter, which I've indicated as one of the steps leading into NVivo, but I also used it before I used LexiMancer. So when I put the data into LexiMancer and into NVivo, I coded the text multiple times. So I didn't drag the NVivo coding over into the LexiMancer coding, and I didn't take my yellow highlighted text or my Excel text. I started with pure text yet again. And the reason is because I didn't trust NVivo and LexiMancer. So I'll show you some diagrams of how this brings text analytics to the personal computer or laptop. And it's hosted on a cloud service, very much the same as NVivo. In the early models of NVivo and LexiMancer, it was trialled within the University of Queensland and it was free to all academics. It's now very difficult to get a licence, and only if you're under a PhD, and I'll talk to Iman and the other students here who have either graduated or have experienced this within the University of Queensland, licensing is sometimes problematic. So I had a couple of heart attacks when I was dealing with this in my candidature, because the licensing would end and you'd have this terrible feeling that you were going to lose everything that you'd spent 2 years coding, and many, many nervous breakdowns, I can tell you. So my study was a longitudinal study into the impact of technological change at the ABC from the 1950s through to 2017. So the volume of data was gathered from case study interviews, 10 interviews, exactly the same model that I've proposed for the small medium enterprise study. I feel very, very comfortable with and can't wait to work with Riani and Imam and be better on this. It's going to be fantastic. So you can also bring in survey analysis, market research, social media monitoring, customer loyalty and forensic analysis, and interview transcript analysis within Leximancer and NVivo. I'm going to show you something very exciting in NVivo as well, which is Qualtrics. I'm going to show you what we did with our small medium enterprise, with our rapid transition to online learning study in a minute, and I'll show you literally on the screen how to drag it into NVivo and see how exciting this is. And for those of you who know NVivo and Leximancer, there may be people in this group, this session, who absolutely hate it, and there will be people who just couldn't survive without it. And that has been my experience for 12 years in dealing with this. So picture that I had data coming in from Leximancer and NVivo, and so you're able to do as you would to create a diagram, and using Excel you can do this. You can get your word trees using Excel. You can also use R to do the same thing, and you can use Python. There's so many that exist. It's really exciting. But what I did with large volumes of Leximancer and NVivo data was I pulled it all in and then coded it and then let the diagram build itself. You can actually jump into here and shift this. So because I prepared a different presentation, I won't go into much detail about how to do this, but I would welcome an opportunity to show you at another time, where I'm not just pulling 2 slides into a different presentation at the drop of a hat. And I'm really happy to do this. So this is my NVivo nodes. So this is a diagrammatical representation from 1960 to 1980 of the electronic era. So using the number of references related to these particular technologies, I've been able to map these technologies that the Australian Broadcasting Corporation used in that particular era. In my thesis, I broke this down into a number of eras, and it was because I used NVivo that I was able to do this. So coming back to the COVID-19 small and medium enterprise study, we are looking at digital changes and transformation opportunities, plans and barriers. So these keywords will be our qualitative keywords, and when we go through the text, we throw in coding underneath. So every time the word transformation opportunity or that theme, the content goes underneath, very similar to an Excel spreadsheet. I'm not going to go into that because that's not really going to help us. I'm not going to talk about that. So our approach and methods is we're going to survey the Jackpreneur members, we're going to do the case study with 20 CEOs, and we're going to consult key stakeholders. And we're really lucky, thanks to Riani and Iman and the UE team, we're going to be able to work very closely with the ministry and the key stakeholders to make sure that our content is relevant and valuable under the existing policy. So we will use our qualitative data to inform a 15,000 word policy report, and we will make a presentation to the Australia-Indonesia Council. What I want to leave you with is applying survivorship bias. So I want to minimise my screen here because I've got notes under here that I want to read. Oh, I knew this would happen. Let me just get rid of my little line here. So this is Abraham Wald, a Hungarian mathematician. but his work was with statistics in 1943, and he is pinnacle in changing the way people thought about protecting planes in the war. So what we see here is the splattering of bullets coming from other planes or from the ground, hitting aeroplanes. And the Armoury decided that this was fantastic. It was great data. It basically said to us, wow, if we put extra metal on these areas, we are going to save more lives of our valuable servicemen. However, this guy said, you've got it wrong. These are the planes that made it home. These are the planes that enabled us to reach safety. We don't need metal where the holes are. We need the planes that burnt and sunk in the water. We need the ones that didn't make it home, and that's where we've got to put the metal. So not only did Abraham Wald change the thinking and save thousands of lives, he also set something very important about qualitative research. So bringing survivorship bias to this study, we've got mainstreaming strategy from the Indonesian government, which aims to optimise the role of digital technology, enhancing the competitiveness of the nation. So we know this study came out 2020 to 24. This policy came out We know that we're running a study between August and September, and we are interviewing members of Jackpreneur. But I leave you with a thought. Think of the aeroplane. We're going to be interviewing people that can afford a membership, people that are still acting as small, medium enterprises in Indonesia. And that qualitative data that we're going to get is with people who are still working and viable as small, medium enterprises. So before we start this study, I want us to think about that aeroplane and make sure when we do our interviews that we capture the planes that sunk, that we interview CEOs of failed businesses, failed small, medium enterprises. So we get a full picture for our 15,000 word report to make sure that our qualitative analysis avoids survivorship bias. We don't want just the survivors of COVID-19, the ones that are successful in digitally transforming. And I'm certain that we will be able to identify key themes by interviewing the 20 CEOs and over the 900 using a survey. But we somehow need to work together to capture those ones that haven't been able to survive, because they're the ones that the Indonesian government needs to rescue or decide what strategies need to be put in place to be able to keep Indonesia growing economically and making SMEs resilient. So that is my little presentation, and I would love to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Heather, for a very nice presentation. And I think we got so many, for me, myself, I've written down some keywords that might be useful for us if we want to have like a more discussion later, talking about partnership, talking about society resilience, societal equity to digital transformation, as well as talking about the methods, about data integrity, qualitative control mechanism, comprehension, bias that we need to be careful about. So I think our discussion could be in terms of the content of the project, digital transformation for small and medium enterprises. Particularly the case study will be held in Jakarta, cooperation with pemerintah daerah Ibu Kota Jakarta. I think here ada Ibu Dewi. If I'm not mistaken, Ibu Dewi is from Pemprov Jakarta, Ibu. if that's the same Ibu Dewi as I thought. And maybe we can also talk about the methods itself, about qualitative, because again, well, why we are having this kind of discussion, because we all of us want to elaborate more about the use of qualitative methods as a main research methods. So anybody welcomes, you may raise your hands or maybe activate your microphone, and maybe you can ask questions. But before you ask questions, please give a small comments about the topic that Heather has presented today. Anybody? Yes?
It's hard, isn't it? I tell you.
No, everybody's shy today.
That
You know,
really, I
I think they're still amazed with your presentation. What? Okay, sure, you can you may. Okay,
just to break the ice.
okay, break the ice. Yeah, sure.
Quick comment. Thank you, Heather, for the presentation. I think it's very interesting when you talk about SME and then the challenges that they're facing and the expectations that during COVID, the only way to survive is to move to the digital space. And I agree with you. It can be very challenging, especially for SMEs with limited resources. But also, you made a point about the bias, the survivorship bias. I'm just curious. Is this coming from your journalistic background or maybe something else? And how does that going to influence the way you do interviews? Do you have like different questions as a consequence of that? And also, how does maybe cultural barriers interfere in the process of digitalizing or digitization, or I don't know what's the correct term there, but yeah, maybe that's the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Heather, you want to answer directly, or you want to, collect the questions first? Which one?
oh no, I
Continue.
think I'll answer one at a time. There was like
Right.
I think
Okay.
3 cultural barriers is a really important point in qualitative research. And why I love working with UE and UQ is because both institutions have very good policies about the way to manage participants in a qualitative setting. The rigour that we've already managed to apply is to ensure that the ethical clearance is secured. So as the host institution, our ethics are completed, and we have been able to get Boo Winnie to give us the letter institutionally. Once the ethics is in place, then our university policies remain very important to us. So when we launch our SME study, we'll have a project launch. And in that, we will be discussing key cultural considerations from both universities. I feel like we have been connecting now with this research team since February. I feel really safe with this research team. I feel like they are my new friends in a troubled time across the water. And what I get is this enormous energy with this partnership, very positive. As a practitioner, ethics is very important to me. As a social equity journalist covering very bad stories about sex abuse and mental health and wellbeing, abuse of people in mental health wards, and also people affected by murder and suicide, and also natural disasters, ethics is really, really important to me. So bringing my journalistic lens into my research, I have a code, the Australian Broadcasting Code of Ethics is very strong about giving attention to respect people of all abilities and gender and race. And I bring that into the university setting, linked elbows with the UE team, where you have your own policies and practices. And working together, one of the benefits of doing this qualitative interview is to keep each other safe in a bilateral research collaboration so that I am respectful. You can enter any setting and be inappropriate without intending to, as we all know, cross-culturally. So I trust my team across the water, and hopefully they trust us to keep each other safe in this bilateral project, to do justice to the requirements of the Australian Indonesia Centre's vision to create a good policy report for Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Heather, for the answers. Mbak Yasmin has activated the
Yes.
camera and microphone. But before Mbak Yasmin asks, I would like to say that if you are convenient asking in bahasa, kalau mau tanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, please do so. And I will translate it. Saya terjemahin nanti pertanyaannya dan tentunya juga jawaban Heather if it is not clear enough. So I can also translate it for you. So please feel free, jangan khawatir dengan bahasa karena memang English is not our mother tongue. Please feel free to use English or bahasa. Okay, yang penting diskusi kita hari ini tetap asik. Okay, Mbak Yasmin, please Mbak Yasmin, your questions and comments.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Heather. It's very interesting a topic that you already presented. I'm interesting about the limitation or the of you mentioned about the SME, because SME in Indonesia is very diverse, from very small to I might say like modern SME or in the type of sector, for example, in services or manufacturing, is very diverse. I was once in a webinar discussion with the SME and how they go to with this situation. Everyone is already, one of the strategy is that they have to move to digital. Okay, let's goes to with my second.
I think there's like a connection problem, by Yasmin. Sorry, Heather. Things like this usually also happen because of the traffic. By Yasmin, you're here again?
Yes, I can see just down there.
But Yasmin, I think it's okay if you want to disactivate the camera, just use the microphone. Maybe it's more stable that way.
Signal. Okay, and the second is about the business digital transformation you mentioned. So what kind of digital transformation that you're going to study? Because from the very simple way, it's about how you distribute. It's about in a marketing way, digital. It's only about that. But in a more complex way, it's about how you run the business. So not only in the marketing aspect, but in all aspects of the organization. But for small medium enterprise, I'm not sure whether the business digital transformation is already applied for a business itself. Maybe it's only in the phase of how they communicate, how they marketing their business. It's only on that phase. So in your research, how it is going to relate? So how deep are you going to study about this issue, the SME and also the business digital transformation? I think that's already. Thank you.
That's a really good question. I'll just share my screen again, and this is new to the UI team. Allow me to make this work for me. Oh, bad driver. Here we go. I'm going to share the survey, which is in development. Oh my goodness. Forgive me. It's just bouncing around on my screen. Here we go. I'm going to get there soon. Share screen. So I'm using, we have early input from UI on the, this is about the scope really. So you're sort of asking a scope. You ask two things, marketing and you'll see when I show you this survey how I'm going to answer that, and then, or how to run a business. And I love the fact you asked that question. Thank you. It's a really good question. So we start off by mapping the over 1,000 people that hopefully will respond from Jackpreneur, and that's why we're so grateful to have access to facilitate the survey, and it could be problematic. So we talked about some limitations of the study, being that you know, going out via the membership is harder to control in a way, because if it comes from an institution, you can keep following it. But we'll see. We haven't got to that talk yet when we have our launch. The first step was identifying the type of small medium enterprise, and we've worked under the Act of 2019, breaking it down to number of employees and how much each of these enterprises earn annually. Once the participant decides that drills them down into a different category. We ask them what province they're from. Hopefully this is going to let me keep going down. So we talk about annual turnover, ownership or cooperative, what type of cooperative, if you're majority owned by an Indonesian person, if not, who and what nationality, length of time you've been operating, the gender balance, whether you're owned by locals, if they're born in the regions, and if so, what regions. And then we talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and this is a very important question that comes back to the first question about culture. That use of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is pretty much an alien term for anyone. So we will need to work with the participants to help them understand that a little bit. And then we talk about social issues, financial, economic issues, and environmental issues. That gives us the context of where you are with your small medium enterprises. And then we start talking about support services provided by the national government and the regional government. And we drill into the type of small medium enterprise that you are. So once we define the small medium enterprises, we're only as good as the participants. And this is a limitation of the study. If people don't participate in the study, we could miss a big chunk of what's actually going on in Indonesia. So then we talk about the types of assistance that the business might need. And we talk about government funding, mentoring, digital transformation training. But we also talk about what have you got in place? When did you put this in place? So this answers your question about marketing and how to run a business. So this will give us that very fine data, which will help us. So you are right in digital transformation being defined well, but the survey is designed to give us both so that we get that answer. So we're going to look at funding, training, financial incentives, mentoring, and there's always that other section. And then we talk a lot about training. And then we ask them, would you recommend SMEs would digitally transform? And then we ask you, so you're going to continue to operate if you're unsure. This is that aeroplane thing, trying to catch people that are about to fail. I hope that we can get a few people that are on the cusp of not being able to operate, so we can catch them before the plane sinks. That was why that's put in there. So that's a very brief summary. I hope that does justice to your question. We could talk about this forever.
Thank you, Heather. How is it, Yasmin? Do you have further comments or maybe other participants before we move forward to the next comments and answers? You also want to, maybe you also have your own definition about transforming digitally transform the SMEs. Well, Heather, yesterday I just had a discussion, as I told you in our previous chat. That I met the assistant for economic affairs of Jakarta, and she told us about what we call as ecosystem. That talking about SMEs is not just about marketing, how they market their products, but also how they get the supplies for the materials, as well as to get the funding for the business. And according to this officer, to Ibu Sri, that what we are talking about, digital transformation, is transforming all of these aspects into the platform. So every aspects would be done digitally through platform. So how the public-private partnership and also relates all, you know, all main stakeholders in talking about SMEs, not only talking about finding the markets, marketplace, but also about talking about the suppliers for the materials, as well as the fintech or the bank for the funding, is also part of what we call as digital transformation. Um, is it also what this project will proceed? Not only talking about the internal and also marketing aspects of SMEs. So it's like the comments from Ibu Sri yesterday. What do you think about that? And also other participants, you may also have your definition about digital transformation for SMEs.
That was a wonderful question. So you're right, we've got the marketing component of digital transformation, and the definition of digital transformation globally is what's been so fun about working on this project about. So there are three components in Indonesian policy where data transformation kicks in, and it's data governance, it's also hardware strategy, and it is also the marketing. So in the survey, we actually allow them to explore that. What I like about the idea of this study is we're also mapping the conceptual understanding of digital transformation, because we've just had a classic example where it's people think it might be marketing and people think it might be automation or data control. So what I love about our study, and the fact it's a pilot study, is we're going to map this by talking to hopefully over 900 people who can help us define it through their lens. And I see that we will identify that one of the limitations, I believe, with digital transformation, I don't want to second guess our findings, but having spoken to Aman and yourself and people in other universities about it, everyone's got a different view about what digital transformation actually is. So once we do this study, we'll be able to say, in this study, we've defined digital transformation as this and this, because we know that it's two things. Good question, really good question.
Thank you, Heather. And I think a participant also has just joined us. Biro Perekonomian, is it from DKI Jakarta, Bapak or Ibu? Ada peserta dari Biro Perekonomian, welcome. Please join our discussion.
Siap Bu, ikut mendengarkan.
Oh iya, baik. Terima kasih, Bapak. Okay. Heather, hope you're not, it's okay for us to sometimes speak in Bahasa, Heather.
I love it.
Translate it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Ada pertanyaan lain? Any other questions? But before you make questions, please also make some comments. Comments-nya boleh apa yang dipresentasikan, what Heather has presented, or maybe from the answers that Heather has given us for the previous questions. Not only about SMEs, if also you also want to know further about qualitative methods, you are welcome to do so, to ask, or maybe to share experience. Ada yang mau tanya? Anybody? Yeah?
May I ask some questions, Mbak Riri?
Miranti, okay, Miranti. Miranti, please speak louder.
Okay, all right then. Is it quite clear?
Yes, it's clear now.
Okay, so good afternoon, Heather, or good night maybe in Australia at this time. I'm Miranti. I'm also one of the lecturer from the Faculty of Economics and Business, UI, but I'm coming from the accounting background. So maybe the area of research is not, I mean, I'm not one of the person who really get in touch with the topic, even though it's really interested, and I picked some of the ideas from what you have presented, and yeah, I mean, your very clear presentations and also very sharp ones. It's quite giving me like some insights that this is going to be a very exciting projects later on, hopefully. Congratulations for that. And I just have some comments regarding the the approach and method that you have presented, because maybe one of the nexus between us is the use of qualitative methods. I'm also doing some qualitative research, and I also did my PhD thesis on the based on qualitative interviews and case study as well. So I just want to confirm with you regarding your perception regarding the case study, because if I'm not mistaken, in one of the slides you mentioned the case study will involve the interview of 20 SME CEOs, is it? Yes. So would you mind to maybe clarify to us about your definition of the case study? Will you bring the case study on Jakarta SME industry, or other type of case studies that you expect for? And the second one is about the survey. The survey will involve about more than 900 Jakpreneur members, if I'm not mistaken, right? And in one of the page of your the questionnaires that you showed us just now, I noticed that there is a questions regarding from what province you are coming from. So it's quite, because you will distribute the questionnaires to Jakpreneur. So I just assume that all those SMEs will come from DKI Jakarta province. So I'm just curious about it.
And, very good questions. And I'm so excited to hear about your research. I would love to hear about it in more detail. So starting with, there was a couple of items. You said, am I focusing on a particular industry? Are we focusing on a particular industry? No, because the survey will help us hopefully capture all of the industries. And when the team works together, I think our consensus is we will talk about the 20 SMEs, because we haven't launched our project yet. We haven't had that lovely bilateral discussion at that top level yet in our thinking. We've just been struggling to get this study underway, and we have literally 12 weeks to do it, which is pretty close. So in the launch meeting, one of the discussions will be about small medium enterprises, the 20 CEOs. So in terms of answering industries, that will happen in the survey with the 900, it will be evident. And am I studying a region? Are we studying a region? So we haven't gone to IABC yet, and we haven't connected with the ministry to see if there's a capacity to round out the study. As Iman and Riani will tell you, the last 2 weeks I've been changing tiny words. So we're on the precipice of hopefully getting funding for this, but we are going to proceed with the project regardless. So we're in this really tentative state where we've got to answer to the funding body, or we keep the integrity of the study the way that the partnership between the two universities wants it. So if we're not funded, then we have more freedom. If we are funded, we need to dance to whatever the funding is requiring. And we thought we had the grant, but we don't know. So they asked for amendments. It's one, I'm sure you've all been through this really exciting time where you get this congratulations email, and then we got one for amendments, which was, you know, I'm really confused. I got another email late yesterday saying, you know, it's going up for approval, but does that mean we've got it? I'm not sure. So in answer to your question, what are we studying? I still don't really have the parameter on it because we haven't had our team meeting, but I can't wait to have our team meeting because we're missing that, aren't we, Iman and Riani?
All right. Thank you, Heather. And also, if I could ask one more question regarding the lecture answer data. I'm sorry if it's quite noisy here because there's construction project just nearby my house. So regarding the lecture answer data, would you please give us like some insights regarding how to make sense of those graphics and those notes?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you're right. I would love to go into detail with that, and I'm happy to at another session. it isn't a quick discussion. It's the diagram is the easy thing. The steps to the diagram is the coding. When you press a button in Leximancer, it builds you a picture. It is heaven. It's like music plays straight away. And you wonder, like when you do your word trees using an Excel spreadsheet and you do all these ridiculously long formulas and suddenly this word picture comes out. It's very similar experience with Leximancer and in vivo. And often you look at these diagrams and you think, oh, what on earth is that? And I hate those pastels. But you can manipulate them too. So what happens is the word the, for example, might create a cluster and a circle where you just delete it. So you can do exclude on the list for common words. So and, the, whatever. And that makes the diagram more clean. And then you come back and keywords jump out. So if I just go quickly to interpreting it. So this is a very, very quick, and I feel embarrassed to be so quick on it. But so you can see here that my thesis was about the impact of technological change at the ABC. So you can see that radio had a dramatic change, and we know that. We know that radio went from analogue to digital. And so there was massive impact on radio because of that. And we know that that impact was on people and use. And that had an impact on media, which was the output. And see, the word having shouldn't be there. Like that's a word that is like the, you're supposed to delete that. I just grabbed a picture really fast to throw it in. And we can see that news has a major impact and facts from ABC Radio's digital transformation. The facts are able to get out there through that, and that helps the news and the stories, and there's a need for that. So I don't make those words up. I find it fascinating using this software. It really intrigues me. And it's no different to those word trees, though, when they bounce out of an Excel spreadsheet and you look at them and you just go, how did that happen? Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. Thank you very much, Heather. One more, it's just a very little comments regarding the meaning of digitalizations. Actually, I don't know what is the exact meaning of the digitalization, but I'm also thinking about to promote our business on social media or to marketplace. I don't know whether it could be classified or it could be included in one of the subset of the digitalizations that you mean. So because I think the spectrum of the digitalization itself is quite wide, and I think it would be could be one of the research questions that you might pose, and can be one of the can be later proceed to be one of the paper regarding the meaning of digitalization by the SMEs.
I think that's a really good point, actually, that we can talk about in our team. I love hearing from you. I'm sure Riani and Iman would love to hear that alongside me. You know, the last thing you want to do when you start a new study is find out you should have asked a very basic question or something. So thank you. That's really insightful. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm happy that you're pleased with that. Well, I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Miranti. Great. And I think we also need to have a special session for Leximancer someday, Heather. And I would like to read, there is a questions from the chat room. It's from Desi, because Desi cannot speak through microphone. Hi, Heather. Thank you for the presentation. The topic is very interesting and relevant with current condition. Since the topic is about the digital transformation, what propositions you have for the failed SMEs? Does it mean that they are not able digitally transformed? And for the method, how can we justify to select only 20 SMEs for the qualitative study compared to 900 for the quantitative one? So Desi has two questions. The propositions for the failed SMEs and to justify the 20 SMEs for the qualitative compared to 900 for the quantitative one. Okay, Heather.
And you've got us on, you know, when you're about to jump off the big board, Bessie. So when you're on a swimming pool and they've got the small board and you've got the big one that's 3 meters and we're about to dive in to do our study, you've got us right on that point where we're still thinking, are we going to jump or not? And that's because we've still got, you know, that's why your feedback is really, really interesting. So we haven't got to the point of identifying the CEOs because that's our next meeting. And Iman and I have chatted a little bit about this. Iman, you might like to talk about it rather than me. You know, it's really all of our study, Iman. And would you like to bring your insights into, you know, the discussion of the SMEs?
Okay, I think we will talk. Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Yes, we can. We can.
So, as Heather said, we will hold at least probably a couple of meetings before the actual data collection. We haven't started collecting the data, so that's why even I think even the 20 SME can be changed according to the result of the discussion with, and also with Ibu Sri, with the official in the government, because they might have a different expectation, and we will have to accommodate between the expectation of the funding body and also the partner in the government. So I think we will need to discuss that in our next meeting.
That's well answered, Iman. And Riani, because I know you have great expertise in this whole idea of sustainability and equity. When I was talking to you about the aeroplane concept, the failed SMEs, I love the fact that Bessie's raised this for us, because when this picture jumped out at me, I thought, oh, and I know, Riani, with your expertise, you've actually covered that sort of concept. I could see you looking when I was talking about it. What were your thoughts when you thought about the failed SMEs that we may not have enough money to be a member of Jackpreneur? What were your thoughts? I'd love to hear that.
Wow. I think if you ask me about industrial relations, I could answer it directly. Talking about sustainability and also in the sense of failed. When I talked to yesterday with Ibu Sri, well, she also mentioned about some survive, some not survive in this COVID-19. But we're talking about the definition of survive and not survive. Well, again, is it they are not in the business anymore? It's just closing down. If that's the case, then they're not CEO anymore of the SMEs. What Desi asked is failed in terms of digital transformation. Are they not being able to be transformed digitally? Well, ada Bapak dari Biro Perekonomian, also Ibu Dewi from Jakarta. I think if we are talking about Jackpreneur, the government of DKI has made the platform to be as inclusive as possible to any kind of SMEs to access this platform. And they also have what they call as e-order, where all SMEs are there, and so it's like a marketplace where all official offices in Jakarta can put an order to SME. So that's how the DKI Jakarta helps the SMEs to, and maybe not only help, but push the SMEs to digitally transform their business. And they also have like a plan, if I'm not mistaken, to also relate the SMEs with banks and fintech through platform, as well as relate them to the markets who then will be the suppliers for the materials in making the products. So it's talking about the failure or failed in terms of digital transformation, whether they are not listed in the platform, or maybe they are there but they're not using it effectively. So I think that's also kind of things that we need to explore with the officers as well as with the players themselves. Heather, sorry, I cannot answer the questions.
No, I
Maybe.
think you did really well in teasing it out and giving that regional insight, which I'm yet to be privileged to have the same understanding that you do by being in country. But I loved that question, Bessie, and I can see Mona talked about data saturation, which I thought was a really good answer in the chat, on building on what Iman was saying about the 20 SMEs. And of course, and Iman sort of answered it that way, saying, you know, if we haven't got enough, we'll keep going. So the original concept was just to go really deep with 20. But once we were privileged enough to be able to align with Jackpreneur, this gives us new scope for the government. And as Iman very well said, we look forward to collaborating. It's on such an early stage. This research project will be very fast, but we're just at that consultative phase before we launch. Can't wait to do it. Can't wait to talk to the government officials and really value and respect their input so we do a good job.
Yeah. Okay, Desi. Hopefully it does quite answer your questions. But this is very good in qualitative, Heather. So that's why she can come up with this kind of question.
Well, I was loving that. I thought that was really clever.
She is clever since she was a student, because she's my colleague since we were students. There is also another question from Monet. Monet, I think this is Monet. It's a comment. Is it Monet? Maybe you can use data saturation. 20 is good enough, but maybe you need more if you haven't reached data saturation. Is that a comment, Monet? I think it's a
comment from Imam and Heather answer from Desi question about the interview.
So if 20 is not enough to reach data saturation, so we could always add more data. That's a
That's what I learned.
Okay.
That's lovely. Yeah, no, Monet, very, very insightful and yes, definitely. I think, yes, great.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. We also have ada participants yang lain di sini, ada audiensnya. You're very welcome, Desi. Desi say thank you, Heather, to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for attending.
Boleh loh kalau mau nanya pakai bahasa Indonesia, boleh-boleh banget. Jadi silakan bicara aja pakai bahasa Indonesia, nanti saya bantu translate. Ada yang mau nanya pakai bahasa Indonesia? Oh, of course English is welcome too. Silakan. Atau ada komen dalam bahasa. I think someday Heather will be good in bahasa too.
Oh, soon, yeah. Sedikit.
See?
Yeah, so I can understand, but my language is gone. So I need to visit you and only speak bahasa, and then I'll be okay. But a long time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anybody? Boleh kalau mau ini langsung tanya aja.
Mbak Riri.
Iya.
Mbak Riri, mungkin kalau gitu boleh cerita insight tentang Australia kali ya. Kalau di Australia sendiri digital transformation. Ya, apa issues-nya, especially yang terkait manusia ya, karena di grup riset kita kan banyak bicara elemen manusia dan bagaimana manusia itu punya kebiasaan, punya tradisi, kemudian juga mungkin ada elemen resistensinya juga gitu ya kalau kita harus bertransformasi gitu. Mungkin insight terkait Australianya yang bisa di-share kali ya.
Okay, Kanti. Let's see. But Ayunda, you has activated your camera. Mau nanya?
Just a quick question to Heather, but thank you so much for explaining your research. Actually quite impressed with Heather and team, with Bu Riri and Imam, who was very responsive during this situation. Maybe I'm the one who are not productive during this.
Oh my goodness. No, that's not true. Nayunda works so hard.
I don't. But I'm just wondering. So I'm I have limited knowledge in digitalization and also business transformation. I'm very interested with the method that you use, especially with the basic assumption that you use at the end of your presentation regarding the survivorship bias. That's quite new to me. I'm I'm doing research using narratives methodology, um, and within the area of gender and authenticity, which is very different with what you are doing. But I'm wondering how to implement this, or maybe using this assumption about survivorship bias in my area, um, which is very I can say that it's very hidden story within each participant, while in your case it's very obvious topic regarding whether companies or SMEs are successful or fail dealing with this pandemic. And I can understand how you use this bias in choosing the SMEs, for example. But in my case, can you give me insights, maybe Heather and also Budiri or Kaimam, how whether I can use this kind of assumption in also choosing my participants, which is very of course very limited because I'm using narratives. So and it's quite tricky if I use this bias, because while I'm looking for authenticity among women leaders, but those women leaders maybe experience failures in terms of dealing with other people in showing their true self or this authentic self. So it's kind of tricky to implement this in the broader qualitative research or method.
I'm loving the way that you're thinking about this, because if you've got women who haven't been able to share their true self, they're like the planes that sunk, really. But if you've got them talking about that, you've actually captured the correct one. So it sounds like you've managed to address and answer your own question. My question was, if we're using SMEs that are members, they're still financial enough to be members and viable and operating, but we haven't actually got the ones that have failed and disappeared, and how do we get them? So it was just a little thought trigger that I threw in there. So if you've got how many people are you interviewing? Are they randomly selected?
I'm still preparing the field work, so not yet, but it's gonna be around 20 or something, because of the narratives methodology. So I'm looking for the rich data.
A bit like us, where we've got to pick 20 people, 20 CEOs, and there will be so many factors trying to influence us selecting that. We've got very important government officials, we've got very experienced researchers, and then we have the random ideas of who to make the 20 SMEs. So if you're doing 20 detailed interviews, this is what I think, because this is very similar to my thesis. I picked 10 high-profile Australian broadcasting journalists and followed their professional careers for 30 years. In other words, my thesis was 12 years, but they told me the narrative of their life as a professional as technology changed. Very similar in a way to your methodology. So the survivorship bias is not really relevant to my thesis either, because they were still journalists. So we only got the planes that landed. I didn't get people that left because the ABC made them learn technology on the job, which was one of my findings, for example. So by doing this really lovely qualitative interviewing, I got people to own up to all this terrible experience they'd had while they were in a flood, and someone handed them a Zoom and said, go and use this, or a mini disc, which had never been tested, and they had to go into the field and file across Asia Pacific from Papua New Guinea with a brand new piece of technology. So by capturing my 10 journalists who were still journalists, what happened was some of them left in the duration of my study, but I still went back to them because it was a longitudinal study, and I was able to really get a sense of why they retired or why they left. And it was actually because of the impact of technology, which was really interesting. So the duration of your study is probably going to come into this narrative inquiry. So if you're thinking, I interviewed my participants 3 times over the 12 years. So I had that lovely distance. Whereas if you're trying to whack this thesis out really fast, it's probably, you've got a very small data collection time, maybe 1 interview with each participant, not multiple, which creates that gap in a way. It's interesting. It's still perfect. It's still great. You know, there's not a fault with what you're describing, but I was just giving you some examples.
Okay. Yeah, because I was trying to Google the survivorship bias once you mentioned, and I'm just wondering whether we can also challenge the survivor and the successor themselves. Like, how can we define those 2 groups? For example, in my case, in my research, talking about, you know, ongoing process, which is very so I'm talking about gender, so it's not something that can be measured. So I'm just wondering whether using these basic assumptions, I can also challenge this.
Actually, I think again you're sort of answering your own question, because Riani sort of said, I threw a curveball to Riani just to be making sure she was on her toes about failed SMEs. We haven't even talked about the definition, and you answered it so well, Riani. It's like you with understanding women and the authenticity in women. It's about how you define it for your study, and once you've defined it, you can carry that theme the whole way through, and it's not left to be open to interpretation. So in any study, you've got to define for me, the impact of technological change on journalists. I had to define whether it was a negative or a positive impact, and yours is about whether they can show their authentic self or they can't show their authentic self. So for our SME study, it's whether they're a failed SME or they're not. So I think our definition writes itself. If they're a member of Jackpreneur, then they're an SME, and we just limit the study to that scope. It's about scope, isn't it? I think. Yes. I don't think I helped you at all. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I think Nayunda is still curious about this survivor bias, whether you could accommodate or use this concept to your PhD.
And it's also about, at that stage of study where you have to be quite strong and not take in a new theory. If it doesn't fit, flick it away.
Yeah.
Try something that doesn't. Don't waste time on it. I put it there as a naughty thought trigger so we could have some conversation.
That's actually challenges of using qualitative as well, because then but that's supposed to be
Thank
fun.
You, Heather.
Okay.
I completely didn't answer your question.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, Kanti also, Mbak Yasmin, you want to ask more questions?
Yeah.
Mbak Yasmin, I think
the group chat.
The group chat.
Yeah.
Let me check.
Human challenges in digital transformation. You know, it made me realize that we are hoping that by business digital transformation, we are hoping that the small enterprise is going to be moved to medium or large scale of business, right? But actually, and it's not. I come across several SME that, well, actually they don't want to be upsized.
Big,
they don't want to be big or medium. So they're very satisfied with what they are as long as they can provide to their family, their reason, I'm not to that area, is the reluctance from the SME itself to growth with the digital transformation, because I think that it's very complex that growth. I'm satisfied. So are you going to issue? It's about the human, the motivation.
Agak putus-putus, Mbak Yasmin.
Mbak Yasmin.
Udah.
But I can get the points whether this digital transformation aims to make like a micro to small, small to medium, or maybe to make micro and small to become medium and big enterprise. Or
yes, that's right.
Yeah, but actually some of the players, some of the business person, micro and small, they don't want to be medium or big. They don't want to upsize the business. Does it have to be medium and big to survive? Does it have to be, do they have to be big and medium to be able to export their products, for examples? To give like more benefits for themselves and to the society. So how is the impact actually of digital transformation to the business? Maybe this is also relates to Kanti's request, talk about human challenges,
that's
human
right.
aspects of digital transformation. So what kind of society that we want to shape with this digital transformation? I think that's the point.
Expand a little bit on that, Mbak Riri.
Yeah.
Also spoke about SDG, and I think in SDG you also talk about environmental concerns, and there's this alternative perspectives on economics, and hopefully we can have that discussion in a couple of weeks' time, where we're going to talk about the concept of degrowth. So degrowth means we're no longer talking about getting bigger, selling more, and etc., etc. So how do you reconcile that in your research? I mean, will there be a discussion on, I don't know, ideological framing, theoretical framing, and how do you like position this maybe different clashes of agenda, or maybe not, maybe I just don't really understand this enough, but yeah, maybe you could speak about that more. Thank you.
Okay, so starting with Yasmin, I like that question, firstly. So our framing is about resilience. So we need to define resilience. So if we go by the grant structure, that's what economic resilience was, what we were asked to research. So how do you use digital transformation to help SMEs be economically resilient? So to answer that question, I go to what Kanti said, which was basically we put it within the framework of United Nations SGDs, where we looked at environmental concerns, social concerns, and economic concerns. So you're on the mark completely of the framing of the study. In terms of degrowth, getting bigger and selling more, and the ideological framing and the theoretical framing, this is a pilot. So what I think we're doing at the moment is mapping the landscape of the SMEs. I've done, and I'm sure Riani and Iman have done, a bit of a preliminary look at what exists to investigate in terms of SMEs. So we're looking at the Indonesian current policy. I've seen some really good documents that talk about a nice parallel universe in the United Kingdom with SMEs. There was a really good study there. When you look for studies on small, medium enterprises, there's not that many that help us answer this economic resilience. So we talk that I've been able to find in the very short time that we've only been doing this project, which is literally, what is it, 5 weeks, Riani? I can't even remember. It's a blur. So degrowth is definitely getting bigger and selling more. I don't know if, as Yasmin said, is that the goal for small medium enterprises? Or do they want to stay the same size they are, but actually use digital transformation because they have to be able to remain viable? So I reckon this is a really interesting point to write down, Iman and Riani, to consider in our conclusions and recommendations, to consider the question of degrowth. You know, we haven't explored the impact of digital transformation on SMEs. We're exploring the impact of COVID-19 on SMEs and how the need for digital transformation is going to help economic resilience. So it's a different type of research question, but I like the idea of the degrowth one. It's like a whole different question, really. I'm hoping.
Thank you, Heather. So it's like an ongoing research. Still lots of questions that we need to answer, we need to address. Talking about SMEs, it is a very important issue, not only, I think, not only in Indonesia, but particularly in Indonesia. It helps to create employment for so many people. I think about 97% of Indonesians work in SMEs. So that's why talking about SMEs resilience becomes more important. The magnitude is big there because it creates, it helps people to get jobs and to get incomes for the family. We only have about 5 minutes to 10 minutes to go. Time flies. We still have some participants who's not yet giving comments or questions. So anybody maybe in Bahasa also okay. Again, I will translate. English of course welcome. Ada yang masih mau tanya, ada yang mau kasih komen. Silahkan, mumpung ada Heather di sini.
I have a question. Am I allowed to ask a question?
To the participants.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So I hear that this is a group for qualitative research development, which I'm really excited to find out about. And it's such a great meeting of minds. There's some really great projects here. And at the very start, there was a couple of students who are doing qualitative research. I think I've heard from Miranti, but I haven't heard from the other two. There's two more. I'd love to hear about how they're applying the qualitative research principles in their studies. Is there...
Nayunda, maybe Nayunda, because you also use qualitative, right? And well, because well, at start actually some lecturers who use qualitative research methods as our main research perspective. Well, we then have this kind of group to talk about methodology, talk about some topics as well, and actually this is a bi-weekly, right? Is it, Kanti? Bi-weekly discussion with various topics. Either it talks about the content or the topics itself, or talking about the methodology or the methods. Nayunda, so why did you choose qualitative, and how do you find it?
Like for me personally, because I did my master in the UK, and they have very strong qualitative traditions, so maybe that's why. So I'm influenced by the research tradition, and then I think I don't want to change my. So I have a very good perspective on researching with full methods. So I'm continuing with my PhD with qual method. I think that's the reason.
So do you think you might like to use in vivo and Leximancer? Have you had exposure to that, or
yeah, I only have experience with in vivo. I haven't used Leximancer before, but I actually joined Imam's mini workshop about Leximancer a few years ago back in the faculty. So I haven't tried it, but I think it's a very, very good tool, especially for big data. But I I haven't used big data, so so far my choice is NVivo, but let's see.
So have you used NVivo yet, or?
Yeah, I did. I used NVivo back in my master degree back in 2016.
Hey, so you were a really early adopter. Yeah, that's great. Well, you'll be a real role model then for people who don't know NVivo, if you know. And
I'm master, so it's only master dissertation. It's not in PhD scale, so I'm a beginner.
I think that's very humble of you. I think
Beginner
what
and
I've learned.
expert.
That's it. So I think what I've learned is doing a project with India, and they're just starting to share data and collaboration using NVivo with me. And what I've found, and Nayendra, you'll probably be able to say this, it's intuitive, isn't it? And quite addictive compared to getting out those handwritten yellow highlight. Oh my goodness, just the thought of it just makes me, oh, can't do it. Don't want to do any more yellow.
Yeah, exactly. Even for my course assignment, only interviewing 3 participants, I'm using NVivo, so I'm just too lazy to use manual highlighting.
So version 12 lets you pull in your Qualtrics survey. So you can bring in Excel, and it's just so exciting. Oh.
Yes.
So I'm just seeing Dewey, has to go. Is that, Well, thank you for sharing about your thesis. That's really exciting, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
But unfortunately, I think Daisy cannot share because she cannot use microphone. But Daisy is very good as well in using qualitative, Heather. And we had Daisy last week talking about her publication and her work using qualitative approach. Well, anyway, time flies. Now it's 15:31. We have reached 1 hour and a half for our discussion this week. Maybe one last short question from other participants. We still have some who has not given question. Monet, of course, Monet. Yes, please.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe I missed header presentation, but I noticed that the output is like a research, the policy paper or something like that for the policy maker. Is it correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Is there any plan to write and send for a good journal? Because I'm thinking we are still developing country, and what I notice is most top ranked journal usually use data from developed countries. So I think this is a good opportunity because I believe with the we may have the data, but with the collaboration with very experienced researchers, it will help us to publish a good paper, because based on my PhD experience working with my supervisor, I can say that my data is, I think before that is a common data is like, in my terminology is like a street food, but when my supervisor involved and she helped me in analyzing the data, the food can be like a hotel, a 5-star food hotel. So that's I still cannot understand how she come up with the idea, but yeah, I see that experience talks and really useful.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have a colleague who can grab what you have and just extrapolate on it and allow you to be so insightful with your own work. And what I love about the bilateral relationship with UE is just having, the strengths from both institutions. We're yet to see how far we go with that, but my experience so far has been so rewarding, like you with your mentor. It's just a really positive thing to be part of. And when you have data and you think you've had it well analysed, and someone comes in with fresh lens and brings it out, it's just like, oh my goodness, that was right in front of me. So before this presentation, I was talking to India. We've got a project, the Rapid Transition to Online Learning, and I'm working with We School, which is an Indian university, and we've analysed the data at UQ, and we're about to invite the partners to reanalyse it. So we've coded it, and then we are writing the sentences underneath. And very like what you described with your situation, what comes out is so rich, and it just proves that with research you can't just be insular, you need to collaborate. The perspectives that bilateral brings is so rewarding, because you get the cultural insights, you get the regional knowledge, you get the global perspective or the bilateral perspective. So that's why it's so rewarding. So my encouragement from a qualitative research collaboration is to do that. Don't be frightened by it. It's really rewarding.
Okay, thank you, Monet, and thank you, Heather. Thank you very much. I think this is, we are reaching our final stage of our discussion this afternoon. And I'd like also to appreciate for Bapak Ibu dari pemerintah Provinsi DKI Jakarta who are also attending our discussion today. Dari Biro Perekonomian dan ada Ibu Dewi. I think Pemprov DKI Jakarta has supported this project very much. And we also like to have like a mutual benefits. As again, Monet has stated that this would be like a policy recommendation. Hopefully that this research is not only for publication, academic publication, but also policy recommendation, which would be beneficial for DKI Jakarta and of course for the SMEs business players. Can we give a very big applause to Heather for today's great presentation and discussion. Heather, it was so lovely to see you here, to have you here with your presentation. Great presentations, great discussion, and of course to all of the participants, audience. Tidak hanya dari UI, but also not only from UI, but also I think banyak juga dari luar UI. Thank you very much. It's lovely to have all of you here. I'd like to announce that we're going to have our bi-weekly discussion again on the 28th of August. So 2 weeks from now on Friday, and Imam will be the presenter. Yay, Imam. And the topic will be about how to easily web scrape massive textual data from social media to study organizations. Wow. So talking about data from social media, how we can use it in our organization study. So Heather, if you are curious about this too.
So I definitely feel like I should come along to that one, Imam.
Imam will be presenting in Bahasa, I think.
That's all right.
Okay. Again, from myself, thank you very much, Heather. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for everybody. And thank you very much for all of us. And see you again in 2 weeks' time. And I would like to say again, thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.